All right, face of the enemy. Okay, this is one of those episodes where um it feels more like a side story than your average episode of the week, yet it's part of one of the ongoing subplots in TNG where it's building on something that already done and leading to something more later. And yeah. So, the basic idea is having Troy get abducted to be part of some Romulan conspiracy to subvert the Romulan government and assist certain Romulans in becoming political defectors and getting into Federation space. No, I don't know why they need the assistance of Troy for this, but that's the plot that they ended up coming up with, was having Troy help them. Yeah. So, the weirdness of the plot idea aside, there are certain things in here that I'm not actually saying that the plot is a bad idea in general. I mean, it is the sort of thing that you would expect for a, like, okay, here's what we're doing today kind of swerve into left field sort of thing, you know? Anyways, so it starts with the reveal that Troy has already been abducted and surgically altered to look like a Romulan. And, certain Romulans who are, not exactly loyal to the Empire are doing their own thing. There are certain things in this episode that I find to be highly interesting because of the world building implications. Like this guy. He's a human who works for the Romulans, or did until this episode anyways. He you know, uh decides to well, see, he's part of Spock's underground movement, which okay, sure. A human would definitely be someone who would understand Spock's point of view better than your average Romulan, that's for sure. But this is one of those things that brings up an interesting point, though, is that in a lot of appearances of the Romulans, it's hand waved as to whether or not everyone on board a Romulan ship is in fact a Romulan. It's generally assumed they are, but it's not actually ever, stated in most appearances. I mean, I think there have been cases where someone will do a ship scan. It's like, oh yes, there's this number of Romulans on board that ship, but it's not really something that they normally bother with. In this episode, you actually see someone who is explicitly not a Romulan on board a Romulan ship and wearing a Romulan uniform. Again, if you're using Romulans, you don't need to have them be this race where literally everyone in any position of any influence is actually a Romulan, because we have had that old thing with Sealov, who is half human, but yeah. Also, another thing with this one is that this guy has the standard Romulan haircut, despite being a human, which, as has been pointed out in certain other media, what we currently think of in TNG as the standard Romulan haircut. What's the best way to put this? If you go back to TOS, the standard Romulan haircut didn't exist. It was solely something created for TNG as a way of doing visual identification of the race by having everyone in the race wear the same haircut, so that when members of the race appeared on screen, people would be like, oh, that's a Romulan, just on a casual visual observation. From an in-universe perspective, it doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense for Romulans to all wear the same haircut when Vulcans don't. And also, Vulcans and Romulans are the same species. They're, subspecies that have genetic differences due to centuries of genetic drift. They're still the same basic species, though. Anyway, though. But yeah, the fact that Deceive had, or however you pronounce that, Deceive, I don't know. I don't remember. Been years since I actually watched this episode. The fact that he has that haircut is obviously a cosmetic choice to blend in. Also, one thing you could do with the whole haircut thing is have this be something that the Romulan military does as part of their military uniform process, because needing to have the same haircut as part of wearing the uniform does actually make it somewhat more difficult to pretend to be a Romulan, because you have to actually figure out how to style your hair to look like the standard Romulan haircut. That is something that you could do. Oh wait, hold on. I need to look. What was Tal Aris? What haircut did Tal Ara use? Yeah, see, this is a very similar haircut to the Romulan military one. Do Romulan Senate? What were the other senators having as their haircuts? Oh, this picture's too small. But yeah, it's like these actually look like it's like the standard haircut. Which, okay, having that be popular in Romulan society for some reason or other, sure, whatever. Do all Romulans have it? Clearly not. Even in TOS, it didn't exist yet. And TNG, if I remember right, not all of the Romulans that you see on the Romulan homeworld when Picard is having a chat with Spock on Romulus actually had that haircut either. So, whatever. The exact meaning of that haircut in Romulan society is not clear. Clearly, it has some meaning, though. Because this guy has it, and he is one of the people who is being smuggled out of Romulan space. Again, it was a convoluted plot, and the amount of difficulty required to insert Troy onto a Romulan warbird as a fake Tal Shiar officer feels greater than the amount of work required to smuggle someone out of Romulan space to me. But whatever. Anyways, now another thing about this one though is that the whole smuggling thing is implemented by the Corvalans. The Corvalans are a neutral race that is not loyal to neither side, the Romulans or the Federation. They have reasonably friendly dealings with both. But, depending on the individual Corvalan, the specific individual might have more willingness to deal with one side than the other. In this particular case, the Romulan underground people tried to smuggle someone on a Corvalan ship. Turns out the Corvalans that they were hiring as an intermediary are actually working for the Romulan government, because apparently the Romulan government paid them more or something. I don't actually remember the specifics, and I don't even know that they actually go over that in the episode. But anyway, the important part is that the Enterprise shows up because the Enterprise somehow managed to figure out where the transfer was going to take place, tracks the Corvalans down, and is able to retrieve Troy and the defectors before the Romulan government is able to stop them. How would I actually write this in a TTRPG? Well, you could have multiple players take the role of Troy. That doesn't need to be a single character. Having it be only one character because of the fact that Troy is a relatively high-ranking member of the Enterprise crew kind of made sense. However, at the same time, when you're having players do it, you don't need to do it that way. And quite frankly, in Star Trek Adventures games, we often have the players be not the highest ranking members of the crew. Like, the TV show did that for TV show reasons, but in universe, it does not make sense to have the bridge crew be your away team. Like, yes, you want to have officers that you trust go down to planets and do diplomatic negotiations. Not the same guy that you have manning the helm on your starship, though. If you have a reason to have a fight, you want someone who is, capable of that on the tip. Anyway, again, the specific logic behind doing things a certain way um, depends on the scenario. And, you know, you doing it in a TTRPG campaign can apply whatever logic you want to in order to justify having certain characters doing certain things. Because for every point that can be made about why this makes sense or that makes sense, you can come up with a counterpoint that also works. Like, for example, in Star Trek Nemesis, when several members of the normal bridge crew are not on board the Enterprise. Wait, no, I'm not thinking of Nemesis. I'm thinking of Insurrection. That scene with Riker doing the manual steering column thing. Um, Riker is in the captain's seat because Picard is not, and several of the other people that would normally be on the bridge of the Enterprise are not. And then you have this Trill woman who is actually sitting at the helm at the console that would normally be manned by Data, who is not on board the ship. And yeah, you see where this is going. Which everything worked fine because you had a backup team who were capable of getting things done. And, that was good. Anyway, though, like I said, having the bridge crew being the people who are getting smuggled into Romulan space on a Romulan ship for reasons that only make sense to Romulans, if you want to do it, go for it. If you want to have someone who is a lower rank than Troy was do this, also good. Whatever. Anyways, so Troy, being an empath, knows that the Corvalans are going to betray them, and that allows them to avoid having the defectors get killed instead of defecting, which, like I said, this got complicated. However, that's the sort of complications where it would present branching points if you're doing this in a TTRPG. Like, you have someone on board the ship who is part of the player team trying to figure out whether or not the Corvalans are actually going to do what they claim they're going to do. And if the players succeed at correctly deducing the Corvalans' intentions, the story might go one way. But if the players fail, the story might go a different way. And having players interact and react to things like that is interesting and part of the fun of playing a TTRPG. And with that, I think I'm going to call this one done. This episode had several interesting characters in it, and it's interesting because of the way they interact with the story. And going over the details of all of that, nah. Because you're writing your own story. You're not playing this story. Unless you're going to go to a lot of time and effort to adapt this specific story. But, whatever. Anyways, see you guys later.